Our focus was on building a people-centered human rights movement, taking into account the impact and the lessons of historical events.
A vision, a holistic framework of human rights, not just kind of atomized issues, but public health, public housing, education, that our human rights vision should include many different issues. There needs to be a connection between the most oppressed and people. There was a mention of academics, and that the leadership needs to come from the people who are the most oppressed.
I want to recognize the students in California who have taken over the administration building. They've been there for almost 2 weeks, and they are challenging the indentured servitude of students across this country. I think it's the first blow for that movement.
We haven't seen a change, and we haven't seen a push from the administration despite our expectations. So what do we want to do? We could have chosen a list of critical issues. Maybe, for example, we could have picked criminal punishment and pushed the administration to make some really significant changes right away. The problem is, as a human rights movement, what we're trying to do is build solidarity.
The Robert T. Stafford Act is a statute, a law, and it's a big, complicated law that covers all kinds of stuff. You name it, it's in there. But what we discovered after Katrina, it's totally discretionary. So all this big old law that covers all this junk and has all this verbiage in it, nothing happens unless the administration says, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. We're actually going to do something about housing. We're actually going to do something about opening up schools and building the infrastructure back. It's 100% discretionary.
We want a human rights institution. We want to change the commission, which has been focused for a long time on the civil rights agenda, into a human rights institution that monitors our government, that makes recommendations to Congress, and that serves as the conscience of our country on human rights.
Nothing happens unless the administration says, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. We're actually going to do something about housing. We're actually going to do something about opening up schools and building the infrastructure back. It's 100% discretionary.
When no one was questioning land relationships in the financial markets, when someone was able to buy a house that was worth $100,000, pay $200,000 for it, because they thought they were going to be able to sell it next month for $300,000.
Under the Stafford Act, you don't have the right to housing assistance. Absolutely no right whatsoever. If you're lucky, you might get a formaldehyde poisonous trailer. Under the Stafford Act, nobody has the right to things like health care, mental health care, or trauma counseling services. Okay, so you look up here, this is who flooded. So all these neighborhoods flooded because they've all got some degree of blue. The darker the blue, the deeper the water was. New Orleans East, virtually all of it flooded. African American. Chantilly, all of it flooded. African American. Ninth Ward, all of it flooded. Big time, African American. Lakeview, got a lot of flooded. A white neighborhood. Old Metairie, the suburb right next to New Orleans, it got flooding too. So the Corps of Engineers says, oh, man, out there, we're going to raise the levees, we're going to do all kinds of stuff. This is the first official report we've had so far from it. It's a little bit dated now. And what are the flood reductions? Well, if you live in New Orleans East, 0 inches. That's how much you're getting pursuant to all these activities the Corps is doing. Chantilly, you get flood reduction of 6 inches. Ninth Ward, you get flood reductions of 2 feet. Well, you know, if you had 12 feet of water, 2 feet isn't going to get you real far. Lakeview, 5.5 feet of flood reduction. White neighborhood. Old Metairie, 5.5 feet of flood reduction. A year after the tsunamis, in 2006, I went over to Thailand and Indonesia, and I saw what our government had done over there. Rebuilt communities, community centers, infrastructures, you name it, and they did it all pursuant to these 2 things. They don't do it at home. Human rights at home, not part of the equation. Now, also, because our so-called environmental protection laws are not grounded in human rights protections, we've wiped out communities of color with pollution, totally displaced them, they're gone. Next slide. Without a human rights framework, you're not going to get a handle on this displacement that has historically been going on in our communities of color. You're just not. You either wrap it into human rights, or there's no hope.
Rethinking their relationship to land and housing in a way that they haven't before presents a unique opportunity for the social justice movement to come in and present an alternative view of what a crisis, a social clash, which happens as a result of the crisis, and then at the end, you have a new society. So now, this creates an incredible opportunity for us, I think a historic opportunity, because it seems that whatever happens at the end of this clash, at the end of this crisis, it will be significantly different than what we have now. Okay, AIDS, housing, urban food security, and picture the homeless. For those of you who don't know, I've been doing land takeovers in New York. It took over a vacant lot in Harlem and took over a building as well for a short period of time.
And we talk, the way it relates to housing is the ways in which police brutality impacts communities of color and destabilizes neighborhoods. So we're organizing neighborhoods to fight back for public safety that includes police accountability.
We have a low-power FM community radio station, and so which is dedicated to community education and organization.
With the People's Assembly involved in the Utilities Justice campaign, a number of people are being evicted because of high utility bills, cutoffs, etc. So.
In Illinois, I think they're woefully behind the curve in terms of some of the work around, just in general, around foreclosures and take back the land and so forth. I know.
Our goal of working on the school to prison pipeline in South Lake was for that reason, was to preserve the ability that you don't have to leave to have a life. You know,
we do a community-based Know Your Rights education curriculum, which centers on teaching immigrants how to protect themselves from getting a home invaded by ICE specifically.
The foreclosure crisis hit single women who were caught up in these financial messes particularly hard, and a large proportion of them were African American women.
The link of shifting the tax base for schools away from home, you know, private home tax, real estate tax, to either income or whatever. But it's
poor districts generate, tax districts generate less money than, say, suburban districts.
How are we challenging power and decision making at the level where all this stuff intersects? And we
taxes and around revenue generation. And it will be a primary fight over wealthy homeowners not wanting to stop anything that would tax them further because they're losing property value.
So what we would argue is that the state's deregulation of the financial markets that led to this crisis was a failure of their obligation to protect, because it allowed investors to take decisions that ultimately eroded our economic and social rights.
To begin with, understanding the problem and understanding the reality that I know everyone in here understands, that our communities were in recession before the recession hit. Same thing, we've been struggling, we've been surviving. You know, so that was nothing new. Like, where's my bailout?
But the restructuring of the economy that had to do with the downsizing of, you know, full-time labor to temporary, part-time, contracting out.
So the critique of neoliberal policy can come from the human rights lens, which is what we're trying to attack. Now, does that then give us a new model of a different kind of economy that we envision? Is government as the employer of last resort? Is that what we want as a response to unemployment? I mean, those are questions I think we can ask. Am I not getting the question right?
The good thing about the community development corporations, even when they're jacked up, is that they're still at the community level, so we can get them up.
In terms of the human rights lens, look, the human rights lens in terms of an activist agenda in the U.S. is nascent.